when you have an asset, the more of it that is made reduces the value of your portion of it. So what's happened with real estate is the price has gone up, but there's clearly more houses, right? But the price is not a double getting screwed here, because the value of your house has actually gone down in the whole market because there's more houses, but the price of it's actually gone up. So it gives you, there's like it's stretching you out to this massive level most real estate investors don't understand. Now, the reason why people love real estate is very simple, because it's not a mark-to-market asset, right? With equities, everything is marked to the market every second of every day that the market is open. Real estate isn't. So you can take, 15, 20 year, in the US, 30-year mortgages out and just hold that asset. I think that's been pretty damaging to society. I mean, families are shrinking. It's the reason why people are not having enough children. The one thing I'm glad about Bitcoin is that it's going to reset society and reset housing back to, what it should be used for, which is the house that you want to live in. And that's what housing is. Bitcoin is the same asset in London, it's the same asset in New York, it's the same asset in Singapore, it's the same asset in Dubai, it's the same asset in LA, it's the same asset everywhere in the world. There are only 21 million. This is a once in a species opportunity. That's it.
Welcome. And how did you find Bitcoin, and how has it changed your life?
Firstly, thanks for having me. Bitcoin found me, I would say, right in the middle of the worldwide flu season that we had. I was back in London, the first time that we had a lockdown. You just didn't know what the hell was going on. So I was like, okay, well, this sounds like a bunch of BS, but let me just play along and see what happens here. So the good thing about London was we could actually, while most of the world was completely locked down in the UK, we could go out, we could, walk around, we could do everything outside, just couldn't gather in groups. Anyway, I was walking around this park local to my parents' and family home, and a friend of mine who I respect a lot rang me and said, "Hey, you need to buy some Bitcoin right now." And I completely had written off Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a complete and utter scam to me, right? In 2017, I got into one little trade and it was just like, okay, I made some money. These morons are crazy. They're going to lose everything, et cetera, et cetera. So Bitcoin was a complete scam to me. And then this guy rang me and he said, "You need to buy some Bitcoin." And I said, "Get the fuck out of here. What are you talking about? This is not what we do. Let's talk seriously." And he said, "Look, we're not going to have another conversation until you listen to this book." And that book was the Bitcoin Standard. And obviously, I have a background in gold, I have a background in real estate, and I have a background in equities. But the Bitcoin Standard really woke me up the moment that Saifedean starts talking about the idea of stock to flow. The idea of stock to flow is used quite heavily in the gold space. And the moment he just mentioned stock to flow, it was like my whole life froze, because I realized I was looking at Bitcoin wrong. I was looking at it like an equity, but I should have been looking at it like a commodity. And in that instance, I knew I was wrong about Bitcoin and I started buying. I opened my phone, downloaded Coinbase, had the Coinbase account from a couple of years prior to that, reactivated it, wired some money, and started buying. Before I walked home from the park, and in that journey, I'd already bought my first Bitcoin. And that's what it was. That's what started off for me. It was the Bitcoin Standard around that park.
Amazing, amazing. Yeah, yeah. And then talk to us a little bit about like your property, yeah? Uh let's compare Bitcoin to property, or compare it to gold as well. But let's start with property, yeah? So how does it compare to property as an investment, especially in the current economic climate, yeah? With risk and rewards and interest rates going up.
Yeah, property is an interesting one, right? So, um, I started off my career in property and negotiating new build deals at the time in 2005 to 2007, where you could do instant remortgages and basically pull out capital on day one of completion. That's when I started working in real estate, and I understood very quickly, I think because of 2008, that it wasn't really about the property, right? Investing in property is not about property. Investing in property is about the capital and credit markets surrounding property. And I don't know how I made that connection, but it was one of the most important connections that I've ever made because it helped me realize that it's never about an asset. It's never about the equities. It's never about real estate. It's never about gold. It's never really, to a certain extent, up until you truly understand Bitcoin, it's never really about Bitcoin. The scam is the liquidity, right? It is how much money can we print, right? Imagine 2008, right? So my first experience as a young investor, businessman, whatever, was 2008. So it was the single worst experience that anyone had ever experienced since 1929. It was almost like capital froze. I'm sure you remember what was going on there. The market stopped. It was the one time where I had first time. So to me, my blueprint is that's what a recession is. I don't know anything else. And even right now, like everyone tells me we're going through a recession, and this doesn't feel like a recession to me. So that's the blueprint for me. Now, what I realized with property was that real estate is a proxy to accessing the credit markets. And it's never really about real estate. Then you look at it and you go, okay, so if it's about accessing credit markets, well, then where's the value of an asset? And what you quickly realize is that the value of an asset is in its supply and demand. And really in its supply, not really its demand, right? Because there's a lot of things that happen to incentivize demand. If there wasn't the incentives to own real estate, like the tax incentives to own real estate, most people wouldn't own real estate because it's a pain in the ass of an asset. You got to look after it. You got to maintain it. It needs a new roof. You got bullshit tenants. You got to change the light bulbs, right? There's just like so many annoying things. So what they've done is they've created an incentive structure to focus people in on real estate. And that's been the chosen asset up until now. However, what you realize quickly is that, like we did since 2020, real estate prices are not going up enough with the amount of money that's been printed. So it's not been a good protector of value. Uh, Maybe London has, right? But maybe major cities have, but other real estate has not been a protector value. So that was my background in real estate. That was me understanding like what is the actual value of real estate. And you realize very quickly the value is the supply and demand dynamics, and the value is the tax incentives, and the value is the liquidity. That's it.
Yeah, yeah. And when people actually do the maths, the real maths behind it, yeah, and they realize people think that their real estate is actually going up in value, yeah. But most people haven't done the homework on the money printer and the devaluation of the currency. So your real estate is probably going up only in line with how much money is being printed in your country or in your region, yeah, at that particular time, whether it's 8% a year, 10% a year. So people aren't even understanding that. A lot of people in real estate don't understand that. And don't get me
I'd
wrong, I
actually
didn't
take it.
understand that
I'd
years
actually
ago
take
either.
right. I'd actually take it one step more micro than that. And what I would say is when you have an asset, the more of it is that is made reduces the value of your portion of it. So what's happened with real estate is the price has gone up, but there's clearly more houses, right? But the price has gone up. So we've had a double getting screwed here because the value of your house has actually gone down in the whole market because there's more houses, but the price of it's actually gone up. So it gives you there's like it's stretching you out to this massive level that most real estate investors don't understand. Now, the reason why people love real estate is very simple because it's not a mark to market asset, right? With equities, everything is marked to the market every second of every day that the market is open. Real estate isn't. So you can take, 15, 20 year in the US, 30-year mortgages out and just hold that asset. And I think that's been pretty damaging to society. I think it's the reason why, families are shrinking. It's the reason why people are not having enough children. It's I'm the one thing I'm glad about Bitcoin is that it's going to reset society and reset housing back to, what it should be used for, which is the house that you want to live in. And that's what housing should be.
Yeah, yeah. It's going to change a lot of things, all right, and it's going to change a lot of assets as well, and how people look at assets, and and the value of them, how they're going up in value as well, and how they're being manipulated as well. There's a lot of assets out there that are being manipulated that most people don't realize.
Yeah, I agree. Look, when you have access and control of the button that prints the money, you have access and control to quote unquote manipulate. Now, what's quite interesting is most of the manipulation that people complain about is actually legal, right? Technically, manipulation should be illegal, but it's actually completely legal. And that's the thing most normal people don't get their heads around. Anything that's being done is completely and utterly legal because we have voted for it.
Yeah, yeah. That's the crazy thing. It doesn't do us any good, but it's still legal, you know, in
It's
in the grand
absolutely legal
scheme of things.
because we're society is no longer educated, right? Society is no longer educated. You look at schools, you look at everything else going on around the world, and I can only talk about the UK. No one's educated on financial health. No one's educated on how to make money. No one's educated on the real things that are really important, and it's sad.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's even going to get even worse
But
as we go further into because we can see what's going on in Ireland, the UK. You know, we can see what's happening. So,
mhm.
uh, that's why you know Bitcoin can protect you from different things. Yeah, a lot of different things depends on how you come to it. Yeah. Let's
Yeah,
talk a little bit.
Bitcoin is definitely, sorry to interrupt you, but Bitcoin, I'm increasingly understanding that Bitcoin is definitely a hedge against the ignorance of the mass populace. And that's what you need right now.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, And maybe I don't know if it's a hedge. I use that word. I use it as a strategy to kind of help
Mhm.
to protect yourself, yeah, from the change that is coming. And people say change isn't coming, but we can see it. Yeah, anybody that's doing their work and starting to more look at the macro aspect of what's going on around the world. There's big changes coming. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the market. What's going on at the market? We can see what happened last week there with the yen being devalued. Yeah. People were selling their stocks and shares. I think Warren Buffett sold 50% of his Apple shares there last week. Yeah. And then the market is going down a little bit. The stock market, that is. Yeah. And why is that affecting, do you think, Bitcoin?
Well, it's because right now the correlation of Bitcoin is highly attached to risk on assets. Correlation is going down quite significantly, but it is still currently attacked. When you've got something like a broad market sell-off like we had last week, or rather beginning of this week, um, you're going to see people try and take profits from wherever the profits are, and Bitcoin's a highly profitable asset. So you're going to see, two effects, which is money stop being invested into something, and also you're going to see people stop buying it, right? So there's there is there's two sides of it, and it causes drawdowns in the market, and that's what we had. We had a broad market drawdown, and Bitcoin's now bouncing up. It's already almost at 60,000 before we started this interview, and it will bounce up. It bounce up a lot faster than everything else. But in a broad market sell-off, Bitcoin is you'd expect Bitcoin to go down.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah.
completely normal.
Yeah, yeah. But we can see it all on the other side of that. Yeah, the ETFs, the Bitcoin spot ETFs, are really the inflows coming into a massive. Like I remember
Yeah.
last year, I was looking at stuff, and we thought maybe they might be maybe 10 or 20 billion worth of liquidity come into it. But sure, that's it surpassed that by so much more now. Let's talk a little bit about the ETFs, yeah, and what you think of the ETFs. I know now some people are more into ETFs and some people are into self custody. So I'll just explain that a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, the ETFs to me are an absolute game changer as far as Bitcoin goes, right? There is stages that Bitcoin goes through. So the people that don't like the ETFs are the people that, very rightly want Bitcoin to be exactly not controlled by by centralized institutions. They want Bitcoin to have the, how do we put it? The true essence, quote unquote, of Bitcoin. When you come speak to investors like myself that come from more TradFi assets, you understand that most people don't actually understand what they hold, right? Most people don't understand what a mutual fund is, and yet most people hold mutual funds. Um, and the vehicle that allows that to happen is an ETF. So Bitcoin is going to be rammed into portfolios now. over the next 18 months, 5 years, 10 years, et cetera, et cetera. And part of that structure is going to be the ETFs, and it's a good thing. The ETFs are a fantastic thing. It is a way for people to hold Bitcoin without having the quote unquote risks of self custody. Now they have other risks for sure that you need to take care of. But yes, the ETF is a great structure, and I'm glad that's been approved. And the ETF is really one of the reasons why my channel took off, because I started talking about it as soon as BlackRock filed for it. And people started paying attention. That's my world. I was waiting for the ETFs to come around. In fact, in 2020, as soon as I realized that I was looking at Bitcoin differently, not like a commodity like it should have been, one of my first thoughts was this is going to turn into an ETF, and then there's going to be billions of dollars coming into it. And now it's finally happened. I had to wait 4 years, but it's finally happened.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And the thing about it, it's only starting. It's only starting.
It's only started. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So this week we've had yesterday. On the 7th of August, we've had 15,000 salespeople from Morgan Stanley approved to sell the IBIT and FBTC ETF products to their clients. I'm receiving phone calls from people saying they're already getting phone calls from their Morgan Stanley advisors to sell those products. So that's a really good thing. Basically, it's the easy. We are now going to equip an army of salespeople to sell the best performing asset to investors. And they're now going to call them up and say, it's not anymore like, oh, we have a risk on asset or we have a risky asset that we want you to sell. Now it's we have a BlackRock fund that we want to get you into. And the compound growth and the CAGR is, 30% a year on the product. This is a different sell.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It is. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Yeah, the next couple of months are going to be very, very, very interesting. Yeah, and we're going to see. I think a lot of people are going to be really woken up to what Bitcoin can do. Yeah, and how it's going to change a lot of people as well, because uh, we don't change Bitcoin. Bitcoin changes us.
Absolutely. Robbie Mitchnick, who is the head of digital assets for BlackRock, was at a conference, I think, with Anthony Pompliano, and he said, or was it with James Seyfarth, one of the two guys, James from Bloomberg or Anthony Pompliano, and he said, we're seeing people have these conversations about a 2 to 3% allocation of their portfolio into Bitcoin now, right? And so you go, okay, well, 2 to 3%. Well, how much capital does BlackRock touch? And you look at the top 10 asset managers, or it's something like that, something like the top asset managers in the United States, and they touch $100 trillion of capital. So they're talking about $2 to 3 trillion of net long buying demand coming into this market. That is enough to take the price to $5 million a coin based on the bull market multiple of Bank of America in the last cycle, right? And this time round, you've got a rotation of buyers happening because ETF buyers, as has been demonstrated in every dip since the ETF launched, do not sell, right? BlackRock had zero sales coming out of their fund in the last 6 months, right? It's been net long. BlackRock is the ETF for diamond hands based on what's going on. FBT has seen some selling, all the others have seen some selling. The BlackRock fund has not seen any selling. So as far as I'm concerned, the BlackRock IBIT fund is the ETF for diamond hands at this point. So there's a lot of exciting stuff here going on. Now you imagine $2 to 3 trillion going into this asset through all the different ways possible, and you're looking at a phenomenal amount of price gains. Like I said, it's enough to take it to $5 million a coin.
Yeah, yeah. And the thing, the truth be known, yeah. And from our experience as well, people go in with 2 or 3%. You know what I mean?
Right,
But after like maybe 6 months and they start watching and seeing what's going on and learning more about it, then they go in with more and then more.
right.
And most people, a lot of people that have done their work on this are probably in by 40 or 50% once they really understand what's going on here with this with Bitcoin.
Yes, institutional investors won't do that, but it will be significantly more than 2 or 3% for sure.
Yeah, 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 definitely, yeah, yeah. Let's talk a little bit about let's just say the global economics and maybe a bit of political issues out there. Yeah, about the
Yeah,
yen. Yeah,
political shitstorm going on all around the world by the looks of it. Just had a stupid election in the UK. We've got the biggest. There's like different circuses. That's the way I look at it, right? Like all these countries are circuses, and they've got their own clowns, which are the politicians on both sides of the aisle. And now you've got the main headline circus, which is the United States of America, coming to pass in November. And of course, there's going to be uncertainty in the markets as a result of that because you just don't know who's going to get elected. You don't know, and they're really good at that. America's really good at entertaining people with their politics, right? Right now you had President Trump leading by 10 points, and right now he's like 1 point ahead of Kamala Harris, who has never got a single vote from anyone to be president ever. Um, and this is good. This is volatility. This creates volatility in the markets, and we'll see how it shakes out by November. So that's what
Yeah.
we got going on. There's a lot of political instability going on around the world. It has to get sorted. We've got Israel, got the Gaza situation. You've got Russia-Ukraine situation. You've got either we're going to get Trump or we're going to get Kamala Harris. Those are two very, very different types of personalities. The UK has just gone 14 years conservative to now a Labour government. Now we've got riots in the UK. There's just a lot of tensions growing everywhere, and I don't know how this is going to shake out. So it's probably best to not be in any risky positions, and therefore I want to be 100% in Bitcoin.
Yeah. And that being said as well, if different things happen out there and there's different issues in different countries, Bitcoin is the most easiest thing to move with or to protect yourself with. Yeah. If you have property, you've got gold. How do you move them things? How do you bring them across borders? Look what's happening in other countries at the moment. Yeah. We don't know what's going to happen. There's a lot of tension out there. Yeah. So what would you say to people about that regarding that?
Yeah, look, one of the things that I am blessed that I decided to do was move my assets out of the jurisdiction of the United Kingdom very early on and actually leave the UK a few years ago. So, you know, it was such a pain in the ass to do that, and that was just with equities, right? That was just with equity positions. Whereas with Bitcoin, you basically pick up and get on a plane, right? And that's it. Now, of course, this is different for our American friends that are listening because they're tied to the hip by the passport of freedom.
Yeah.
So, they've got a different situation, but for you and I, we get to basically pay tax based on residency, right? So I get to, fill in a 4-page form, um, and as long as everything is correct, as long as lawyers and accountants and whatever handle everything that needs to be handled, you're no longer paying taxes, within a very short period of time. So yeah, look, there's just Bitcoin has so many advantages about moving, about flexibility, about going around the world, about giving you the freedom to actually execute the life that you want to live. You can take all of your Bitcoin right now, fly to Dubai, and it is completely and utterly legal for you to pay your rent, for you to buy a car, for you to do whatever you want with Bitcoin. That's phenomenal, right? The fact that you do that with your property portfolio, you absolutely can't, right? How are you going to do that? You have to sell your property portfolio. You then have to go through a bunch of, it's probably going to take you 60 days, 90 days, maybe longer right now in the way the market is in our part of the world to sell that property. It's the complete and utter shit show with every asset. Bitcoin makes every other asset look completely unfeasible. And that's what I'm excited about. It makes equities look unfeasible. It makes real estate look unfeasible. And that's what we need. There's too much overinvestment in useless equities. We need to get back to the point where we're actually analyzing these companies going, okay, are you actually creating any real value in the world? And if you are, then I'm going to give you some investment. Right now, what's going on is we have this blank check and we just have to go spray gun every single company that we can just to get the cash out the door. And so that is hopefully going to change. A lot of things I think are going to change now because of how good this asset looks. And then also, who would have thought in a year you've got a Bitcoin House, a Bitcoin Senate, a Bitcoin president in the United States of America, the biggest, baddest capital markets in the world. And we'll see what happens if he gets elected again.
Yeah. Two candidates as well. They're openly saying that talking about Bitcoin, they want to put Bitcoin on as a reserve, yeah, to protect the country. Yeah. So it's very bullish, aren't they? Yeah,
Jane, it's a different time right now. You
yeah.
got, who would have thought that you would have seen a bill in the US government going through basically requiring the US government to buy 1 million Bitcoin? Like who would have thought you'd see this shit a year ago? It's quite remarkable. But as I've been saying, this is the speed at which BlackRock works. This is what these firms do. They are masters of the universe. And the moment they do you think any politician in the United States has the brain to sit down and go, you know what? Even though I've been voting for bombing people out of their houses at midnight for the last 25, 30, 40, 50 years, I've suddenly just woken up and had an orange pill moment about Bitcoin. I don't think so. I think they get tapped on the shoulder, they get a phone call, and they say, now you're pro Bitcoin. And if you're not, we're going to pull your campaign funding. And I think that's how it works, right? Call me a conspiracy theorist, but that's how I think it works. And you know why I know it works like that? Because that's exactly what I would do, right? If I
Yeah.
was in the position of lobbying these politicians, I'm going to treat them like dogs, right? I'm going to treat them like dogs. You work for me. I don't work for you because I pay your bills. So I'm going to call you up and say, oh, this whole time you were, anti-Bitcoin. Guess what? You're now pro-Bitcoin. And when they say, oh, but sir, how do I convince my voting base that I'm now pro-Bitcoin when I've been anti-Bitcoin for a year? I don't give a shit. Work it out. That's it. That's what I would do. So because I would do that, I know that's what's happening.
Yeah. Just something very interesting there. Last year, before this Bitcoin ETF launched, I was saying to colleagues of mine and people that I know, yeah, not if, but when this Bitcoin ETF is launched, the whole narrative, Bitcoin's going to be good for climate change. Bitcoin's going to
Oh
be
yeah,
good for your granny. Bitcoin's going to be good for your pets. Bitcoin's
yeah,
going to be good for everyone.
yep,
Yeah, and everything out there because the people, the corporations that have these ETFs, the truth be known, they're controlling everything behind the scenes.
right. Yeah, I mean, look, it was. I think it took about 3 weeks after the ETF was approved for KPMG to turn around and say, okay, we are now basically Bitcoin is good for the environment. You know,
Yeah,
took
I
three
remember that.
weeks,
Yeah, yeah,
3 fucking weeks, right after years of saying this is a bad for the environment investment. It's just dumb. The whole game is a setup, and you got to understand that if you're a Bitcoiner and you've been a Bitcoiner up to now, you have been front running the game. And if you're thinking about this now, you are right at the fucking limit now. This is about to take off. And if you're sitting there going, "Oh, should I get some Bitcoin?" Look, we've priced out people under $3,000. We've priced out people up to $70,000. The next pricing out is going to be a few $100,000. And then what do, right? Everyone's fucked. So that's what my YouTube channel is about, to get people like my parents who have real estate, who have done the right thing for 30 years, 40 years, to realize that, okay, yes, that has worked, but I probably need to get into the next thing that's going to work. And that's going to be Bitcoin for the next 30 years as real estate gets demonetized as an investment class asset.
yeah. And because as well, we're moving into a new era as well, and we're moving into a more digital era as well. Whereas traditionally, as what you said, like property worked and it worked for us, gold worked, yeah. But now we're going with everything's been digitalized, and our money's going to be digitalized as well, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to touch a little bit on the future of money, yeah, and what they're planning on doing as well with the future of money? I'm sure you've done a lot of work on this, yeah.
Yeah, I've basically done a lot of work on it, and my thinking has led me to one thing. It is inevitable that we will have a central bank digital currency. Completely inevitable, because it's the only way that you can do growth hacking on your currency, is to have a central bank digital currency that you can manipulate based on behavioral economics for each individual person. So that's coming, right? How effective it will be, where it will be, I don't know, but it is absolutely coming. Um, I think that the world continues to move more onto the US dollar, and I think there is a China fallout happening right now, which will last probably 5 to 10 years. And as that happens, China's influence is going to be sucked away a little bit more. America's going to make somewhere like Mexico a little bit stronger than China, which is what they're doing right now. And so that China influence. We'll see whether they manage to maintain their influence or not in the world as the US pulls out of China. Um, but yeah, look, we're going to get a central bank digital currency. You're going to have Bitcoin. And I think, I can see a future where the average person anywhere in the world opens up a phone and they have a savings account and a check, or a current account and a savings account. The savings account is in Bitcoin, and the current account is in some form of digital US dollar, euro, or something like that. I can see
Yeah.
that happen quite easily.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. Yeah. And as well, in the future, most people aren't going to be talking about Bitcoin because we're going to be talking about Satoshis. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't even think we'll be talking about Satoshis. I'm at the point now where I think that there's a part of me that believes that we have reached peak Bitcoin education, because Bitcoin's at a point now where it is going to be bought by people that don't even know that Bitcoin is running the underlying whatever they're buying, right? If Bitcoin moves on to the stock market, like what Larry Fink is talking about, and doing tokenization through Bitcoin and everything else, they don't even know that they own Apple stock, but it's on the Bitcoin network. They don't know it, right? So I don't know. It's going to be quite interesting. Now you have an ETF, you have all these things. I don't even know whether we will be talking about Satoshis. I'm sure me and you will be talking about Satoshis, but in terms of the broader world, I don't know how this works out. It's quite a sad way to look at what's going on. But I think that this world is going to move very aggressively towards some kind of digital US dollar, digital euro, possibly a digital pound. And then we'll go from there. This is a long journey. This is not a 5-year journey. A lot of Bitcoiners seem to think that, within 5 years, everything's going to be priced in Satoshis. It's not how it's going to work. It's going to be a long, long journey.
Yeah. I didn't mean to say that things will be priced in Satoshis, but the value of Satoshis are going to go up, which the value of Bitcoin is going to go up. Yeah. And people will be using more like Satoshis to buy different maybe goods and services. And depends where you are in the world as well at the moment. Bitcoin's going to be different for different people in different parts of the world. For people in the West, now what we're seeing it is as an amazing store of value. Yeah, as like an amazing asset, an amazing commodity. But sometimes in different parts of the world, people are using it to buy tea and coffee and just normal things for goods and services.
Yeah. By the way, that to me is the single dumbest thing anyone can do right now. If
No.
you're out here buying Bitcoin, buying coffee with your Bitcoin, you deserve to lose all of it, because this is the single hardest asset humanity has ever created. And what you've basically done is fallen for the psyop that the circular economy is worth more than your family's future. Right now, if you're doing spend and replace, I can understand that, but it's still just a circle jerk, right? Just spend the fiat money instead of doing the whole bullshit and losing 5% on the conversion of everything. So yeah, look, I think that's a complete and utter waste of time. There's people that don't, and I respect their opinions. But my opinion is that's a complete and utter waste of time. If you are spending your Bitcoin right now, you should be hugging your Bitcoin right now like you hug your children, right? That's what
Yeah.
you should be doing. That's how tightly you should be holding on to your Bitcoin right now.
Yeah. Holding it really tight and protecting it. Yeah. For the future, because we're going to need it more in the future, especially when all these CBDCs and everything else comes on board. Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's what it's all about for the future, for the kids. Yeah. 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 And market sentiment out there regarding Bitcoin. What do you think people are thinking about it? Yeah.
It doesn't matter anymore, right? A lot of people seem to think that we still need to orange pill people. We don't. We now have President Larry Fink, right, who is orange pilled, right? And what that means is all that capital is coming. We don't need to talk to a single person about Bitcoin anymore. Not a single person that needs to hear my voice about Bitcoin anymore. Why? Because the capital is working its way. The reason why I do what I do is because I want the people that are not being touched by those voices, like BlackRock, to at least get some Bitcoin before they start moving. Because the mistake I made in my understanding of how this was going to be played out was that I thought, okay, so we've covered the bottom, right? That they've sort of been buying Bitcoin for a while, whatever. The next is like 500,000 to $30 million net worth, right? And then above $30 million net worth, ultra high net worth. It's like I thought we were going to the 500,000 to $36 million net worth people, and we're not. We're just skipping them. People like my parents are being skipped over. No one's talking to them about Bitcoin. Why? Because for the first time in history, the top 1% actually has more than the bottom 99% in America. And what that means is BlackRock only needs to talk to capital. Bitcoin is not a human network, it is a monetary network. And for it being a monetary network, the dollars are more valuable than the humans. So what that means is someone with $1 billion is equally as valuable as a billion people with $1 to Bitcoin as a monetary network. So it's easier to orange pill the one person with $1 billion than the billion people, because the billion people will follow at some point. So that's what the hard work that BlackRock is doing now. They're focusing on the people that have the capital because they're the ones that they want to get in first. And it is what it is. So my job is to try and get as many people in that 500,000 to $36 million net worth range to wake the fuck up right now, because this is now going to be swept out from underneath you. You might have had all this time to front run it up until I started talking last year, but now you have an ETF. Now BlackRock's doing the work. Now Morgan Stanley's calling the people. Now everyone is entering the game. So you got Wells Fargo coming out, basically rumors about Wells Fargo approving their advisors to tell their clients about Bitcoin as well. By the end of the year, you're going to have a 50,000 person workforce at a minimum, right? Bear in mind, there's 330,000 financial advisors in the US. You're going to have a workforce of 50,000 people, by my estimation, at a minimum, calling and actively selling people Bitcoin for commissions. Think about it. This is the game has changed now. This is no longer a what I like to call a happy hippie fucking industry. The game has absolutely changed. And if you want to stay relevant, you own Bitcoin. You own as much as you can and you stay holding it. You don't risk it, you don't trade it, you don't do anything. You just hold that damn Bitcoin, because the game has completely changed. This is no longer you go to conferences and high five other happy hippies and celebrate how nice and fluffy the fucking world is. This is now BlackRock's in the game. This is they want every single Bitcoin that they can get their hands on. Understand the players of the game have changed. This is no longer the fluffy bullshit that was going on for the last 10, 13 years of Bitcoin's life. This is very, very different now. It's very, very serious now. The type of people involved are very different. And if you don't take the actions now, you are going to regret it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah. So you have to, just to get in, to start learning about it. People need to start learning about it and take action. Just don't wait around anymore. Yeah. Stop listening to all the nonsense that was being spewed out for years and years. Yeah. It's time for people to really do their work. Yeah. And get in. Yeah.
Yeah, or not, or not,
Or not, or be left behind, because that's what's going to happen.
That's
That's
it. Hey, look, some people just have a pattern throughout their entire fucking lineage of being left behind. Do you think that's going to change because of Bitcoin? I don't think so. I think some people are going to get it and some people are not. And that's okay. That's just how the world works, right? We can't change any of that. Surely I can try and I can put this out there and put it on YouTube. When in the last, you know, 30, 40 years have you seen someone, or forget someone, 100 people be able to talk about an asset with the transparency that we all talk about Bitcoin and just put it on YouTube for free? When have you seen that? Never seen that ever. When I was in real estate, if I found a good deal, I'm not telling anyone about it until I've secured the deal. Whereas with Bitcoin, I can tell people about it. I don't have to worry about myself, because the only advantage that I have over someone else is price. That's it. I don't have any other advantage, right? Whereas with real estate, I've got advantages of connection, I've got advantages of finance, I've got advantages of location, I've got advantages of, like, there's so many advantages that have to happen, privileges and all this other shit with all these other assets. Bitcoin is the first time that a multi-billionaire, a multi-millionaire, a multi-hundred thousandaire, a thousandaire, a broke person, a poor person on the street can buy the exact same asset for single digit percentages difference to each other. It's the first time in human history that this has happened. Some people are going to get it. Some people are not going to get it. All I'm telling everyone is now is the time you fucking get it. Otherwise, you're going to be left behind.
And the time is running out. Yeah, it's going to happen so quick, so fast. Yeah, but especially with all these advisors coming out now, and that's only in America. What about Europe? You know, what I mean, I think this week alone, Russia is after announcing that they're legalizing cryptocurrency and mining and everything. They're opening the whole thing up over there. Yeah, China a few
How long
months
does it take
ago
until
doing a
China?
U-turn.
How long does it take until China launches a mainland ETF? Right? There's ETFs in Hong Kong, but there's no mainland China ETF. They now know that the US is going for a strategic reserve, which means China has to compete. Just from a geopolitical perspective, it's like VCs, right? Once you see one VC going for a ride sharing app, you need to get an investment in a ride sharing app because you now need to compete with each other. That's what's going to happen with geopolitics on Bitcoin. America's doing it, so China has to do it. China has to do it, which means Europe has to do it. Everyone is coming for Bitcoin. You've got one chance in human history because there's only 21 million. My dad got involved in real estate when they moved to the United Kingdom. They bought a house, £5,000 house. 30 years later, it's worth £500,000, right? Now, let's imagine that that priced me out of that market in London. I can still go to another city in the UK that's still coming up, that's still developing, and gain access. Let's say the UK is fully developed, I can go to another country. You can't do that with Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the same asset in London, it's the same asset in New York, it's the same asset in Singapore, it's the same asset in Dubai, it's the same asset in LA, it's the same asset everywhere in the world. There are only 21 million. This is a once in a species opportunity. That's it. Either you're going to have some or you're not.
Yeah, yeah. And the thing about it as well with Bitcoin, and I was only thinking about this about last week. Yeah, with an asset like property, yeah, you're relying mostly on the local market to buy that. But if you have Bitcoin, you can sell your Bitcoin to somebody in China, you can sell to
Right.
somebody in Tokyo, Switzerland, Paris, New York, anywhere in the
That's what
world.
I mean. It's the same asset everywhere in the world. And the other thing is we haven't even looked at the financing, right? Because let's say I've got 100 million that I want to put into, let's say I'm a big investor, I've got $100 million I want to put into some type of commercial real estate or whatever. Well, let's say I want to put that commercial real estate in London. There's not many international banks that are going to do that. Maybe like JP Morgan, maybe Bank of America. Then it's just going to be like Lloyd's, TSB, et cetera, right? So all of those banks are going to do it. With Bitcoin, I can go anywhere in the world. Let's say I want financing on my Bitcoin. I can make a phone call to DBS in Singapore, right? The best bank, in my opinion, in the world, and say, hey, I want financing on my Bitcoin. And they're going to say, okay, we'll give you a 3% rate. The next day, wait a second, I can call Lloyd's of London and say, hey, I want financing on my Bitcoin. And then say, okay, how much did DBS give you? They gave you 3%. Okay, we'll give you 2.9%. Then I can call JP Morgan in the US or Goldman Sachs in the US. And you can do that because it's the same asset anywhere in the world. They don't need a team on the ground to make sure the asset is real because as long as I can verify and sign a transaction, the Bitcoin's real. So it is the simplest asset to monetize. It is the simplest asset to add a monetary premium onto, and it's going to start demonetizing all these other fake assets that we've been driving premium in for no reason. That's the power of Bitcoin, and that's coming for sure. And now you know it's coming because Cantor Fitzgerald, one of the 24 only firms that has direct access for liquidity generation with the Federal Reserve, has announced that they're going to launch a $2 billion fund for lending against Bitcoin. And as soon as they fill up that $2 billion book, they're going to launch another $2 billion and they're going to keep going at a $2 billion clip every time. This is happening right now. People really need to understand how fucking serious this is. Everyone thinks this is a joke, right? Because they're reading the Bitcoin Standard, one of the best books written on Bitcoin. They're reading, whatever the fuck they're reading and thinking that this is some type of hippie fucking thing that's going to last forever. This is not. This is now. And there's only 21 million. And realistically, if you're thinking about it, there's probably only 11 million. Wall Street already controls 2 million coins. Think about it, right?
Yeah.
And now BlackRock's in
There's only 19.7 made, about 3.5 million are
right.
lost. Yeah. We're down to about 16 million. Yeah.
It's serious. It's all I can say. It's very serious, right? And people are not taking it as seriously as they should, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about BRICS. Yeah. what's happening with BRICS? Yeah, it's going a little bit off subject, but I think it's very, very relevant as well with what's happened with the geopolitical things, and there's big moves in BRICS. Yeah.
Yeah, you look, to me the BRICS isn't as impressive as everyone else getting scared. I think it's a distraction at this moment in time. I think the US dollar is pretty powerful. I think the BRICS nations, the one issue that they have is that they're trying to align currency with community, with their different cultures and all this shit. And it's like that's gonna fall apart at some point. Look at the EU, right? Like it's just gonna fall apart at some point. So, hopefully they keep it together. I don't think they will. I think the US dollar reigns supreme for the next 25 to 30 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. All right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, where do you see now? Where do you see yourself in, say, 5 years' time? Yeah. And in the whole space.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't even know if I'll be around. I don't know if I'll be around. I have a very, very specific goal, and that is to build hopefully an army of families that have at least got into one Bitcoin. And with some loose polling so far, it looks like we got 3,800 people that are above one Bitcoin, and loose polling on those people, it looks like they're somewhere between, 6 and 10 Bitcoin per person, right? Per family. So if that turns out to be the legacy of spending a year on YouTube, going through the bullshit that I have to go through on YouTube and social media in order to do that, I think it's a pretty good legacy. And there's probably more people than that, right? It's humbling for me after all the business stuff that I've done that the most fulfilling thing that happens in my day is I get an email or a message from someone saying, because of you, I got to one Bitcoin. It's obviously not because of me. It's there to do with their work, right? The work that they've put in. But it's just humbling to receive that. That's probably the most fulfilling part of anything I've done so far in my career.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very good. Well, to end it off, okay, and to wrap it up, what's your three golden rules to somebody owning Bitcoin?
Uh, I'm glad you like them, right? So look, if you understand everything, anyone who's watching this, you understand everything that's going on here. Ultimately, there are always, as I've been saying for a year, always only three rules to Bitcoin. It's step number one, you buy Bitcoin. Step number two, shut the fuck up. And step number three, you're going to get fabulously wealthy.
Thanks a lot. Okay, thanks a lot, British HODL, and
My pleasure.
thanks for your time. And we will definitely be catching up again soon, and we will keep in touch. So, thanks for your time.